Hello and welcome to the third meeting of the Autumn Turba online discussion group on the history of alchemy broadly defined. The session tonight is meant to introduce the EMLAP corpus. Now, EMLAP stands for Early Modern Latin Alchemical Prints and was produced within a larger project called TOME, which stands for The Origins of Modern Encyclopedism. The main speakers are Petr Pavlas, who was the PI, the principal investigator of Tom, myself, as well as Vojtech Kase. Although Vojtech, I think, will take mostly the back seat on this session, as he will be the main speaker in next Friday's Turba, so a little hook there to connect the two sessions. A quick intro on the speakers. Petr was as I said, the PI of Tom, and is currently a senior researcher at the Institute of Philosophy, the Czech Academy of Sciences, and a lecturer at the Faculty of Arts at the University of West Bohemia. I, Joe Hedesan, am a lecturer and researcher in history of science at the University of Oxford. And in respect to Tom, I acted as team leader of the digital philology group. Vojtech Kase is assistant professor at the Department of Philosophy, University of West Bohemia in Czechia, where he directs the Computing, Culture and Society Lab and teaches digital humanities. So before I start, just the usual admin drill that you know by now. Please, if you can, keep your video on, the sound off. I will be taking questions by either posting them, if you post them in the chat, or you raise your hand virtually. Please note that this meeting is broadcast online via the Shack YouTube channel, and you can ask questions there as well. As always, I would like to thank the Society for the History of Alchemy and Chemistry, which is providing its Zoom account as well as YouTube for our use. So I will begin by giving the virtual floor to Petr, who will talk a few minutes about Tom itself before giving me the floor to discuss EMLAP in more detail. So Petr, if you can share your screen and begin, please.
Okay, I'm now screen sharing. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's all good.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for this great introduction, for welcoming us. Thank you all for coming here. I am not myself a historian of alchemy and chemistry sensu stricto, but in the home project, we very much had something to do with the history of alchemy and chemistry. And as Joe said, she was the research group leader of one of the crucial teams or sub-teams of the home project, which counted 15 researchers on various grades of career or various levels of career. Vojtech was research group leader of the computational historical group. Joe was a leader of the digital philological group. And Lucie Štorchová, our colleague, who is not unfortunately here today, was research group leader of the intellectual historical group. And now, what was the Tom project about in a very brief overview? So first, what was the research aim? What was, because the project is over now. It ended in August this year. So the general aim of the project was to understand how philosophical, scientific, and alchemical metaphors in the 16th and 17th centuries, that is in the early modernity, we didn't get much into the 18th century, but just a little bit. So how these metaphors from these disciplines or these branches of scholarship contributed to the emergence of encyclopedism. Encyclopedism, why encyclopedism? Why is it so important for not only history as such, but for today, for the culture and society today? Our presupposition or something like a premise of the project was that the encyclopedism in the 16th and 17th century centuries was a program which is very similar and akin and also genealogically related to what we call now open science, open access, open education, open source, etc. So it was a sort of a program of universal, of fair or equitable, and of an open science, scholarship, education, knowledge as a whole in principle. So it was a philosophical movement in its ground. But how does it relate to metaphors? That's one issue. And how does it relate to alchemy, especially? The idea is that the encyclopedia itself, as a cultural idea, was originally in the Greek and Roman antiquity a concept of circular educational curriculum, encyclios paideia, as Quintilian's Institutio Oratoria, written in the 1st century Common Era, testifies. In the 16th century Transalpine Renaissance, or Western, we can say Renaissance, and Central European Renaissance, humanist authors took the expression to designate a perfect knowledge, science, and education. I will quote from Erasmus, from Adagia, from 1508. I quote, "To close the circle means to make something perfect in all respects. That is why the term cyclopaideia means the completion of all disciplines as if in a circle. This metaphor is apparently borrowed from mathematicians who consider the circular shape to be the most perfect and complete." End of quote. Another humanist, we can say, Petrus Ramus, in his Pro Philosophica Parisiensis Academiae Disciplina from 1551, puts it in this way, I quote, "Such perfection of spirit is called by orators perfect eloquence, by philosophers, more accurately, perfect philosophy, for perfect scientific interpretation and perfect training in the sciences. Some even call it a kind of circle of learning, an encyclopedia." And last but not least, Rudolf Goclenius the Elder, in his famous or reputable Lexicon Philosophicum from 1613, puts it in this way. I quote, "Circular knowledge, or the circle of learning, is an encyclopedia. That is a complete knowledge of all the sciences." End of quote. So you can see that it was a metaphor of circle sphere of knowledge, of something which is perfect, something which is complete, what is universal, general, etc. In 1630, Johann Heinrich Alstedt publishes Encyclopaedia Septemtomis Distincta, a book which declares itself to be the encyclopedia, a book on all known, omnes scibile. And since then, the encyclopedia ceased to be a mere metaphor for universal knowledge, but became a cultural idea of a new and universal book of books. Nowadays, it is understood as a specific genre of scientific educational literature, an overview or synopsis of either science as a whole or a particular field of science. You can still put a question: why have you chosen alchemy specifically among many other early modern scholarly and scientific disciplines? A good question indeed. So why alchemy? Because in my humble opinion, there is hardly a better field of early modern knowledge to start with when exploring the universalist cultural ideas like universal knowledge and universal book. Then the intellectual culture striving for universal medicine, universal key, universal stone, and a gem of gems. The example of Heinrich Kunrad from 1595 only corroborates this idea and this opinion of us when we entered the project. So just very quickly, the purpose was a series of case studies on metaphorology of early modernity. That will be Joe's task today to introduce the EMLAP digital corpus, or now already the digital database from 15th to 1650, Latin printed books from this period, which are alchemical and Paracelsian. And third, also reusing and examining the existing Noschemus digital corpus. of 1,000 titles approximately by digital, but also computational and classical close reading methods. Very quickly to the outputs, because I can't now go into the results themselves. That will be too much to say for today. But still, these are some preliminary studies. This is what is almost out of the press at the moment from the history of alchemy. By the way, here in the preliminary studies, the most interesting is Martin Žemla's, unfortunately only in Czech, published introductory study to herbarium by Paracelsus. Then here in English, Martin Žemla, I would say, contributed to the history of alchemy and Paracelsianism by a study titled See, Hear, Taste, Sensory Metaphors Before and in Paracelsianism. Most recent studies and forthcoming papers will be discussed maybe next week much more, because these are mainly Vojtech's group's merit. But still, I can just mention that next to this 2026, with the question mark publication on EMLAP in Ambix, we also, with Joe and others, and Carmen and others, plan to have a sort of follow-up to the Tome project. We will see whether it will be an official output or not of the Tome project, but definitely somehow related to it. With Joe, we plan to publish a research article on Mercurius in alchemy and on how to study it computationally and maybe also experimentally, although that will be an issue for other studies than the one which we plan with Joe together. So I think I'm out of time now. Thank you very much, and I'm open to any questions which may arise and which you can ask. Thank you, and I hand over to Joe now.
Yes, thank you, Petr. I would like to ask to if we can reserve the questions towards the end. So because yeah, we have a lot. I have a lot. Maybe I will we'll see how far I can get through it, but to leave some time for questions. But for now, I will let's see, share my screen. Let's see if I can do that properly. Okay. One sec. Just 1 second. Okay, it actually shows on the other screen. Okay, let me stop sharing and put it on the other screen. Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah, very well.
It
works.
Okay, okay. Okay, so basically, at the beginning, I would like to say why we I mean, Petr already said a few things. I would also like to say a few things about the reason that prompted us to actually do the Latin alchemy prints. And the reason mainly is that there isn't a lot out there. So basically, we don't have very many very many texts actually of alchemy on the web. Now, of course, you know that there is quite a lot of books and some manuscripts that have been digitized by Google Books and various libraries across the world, but they tend to be simple images. Here's this one example that I will use. Okay, one of the first major prints of alchemical corpora, which is the Alchemia, published in 1541 in Nuremberg, which contains, amongst other things, the first published Latin version of the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus. Now, this work is available in several repositories on the web, beginning with Google Books, ending with several German libraries, as well as the Swiss depository of ATH Zurich. However, most of these copies are available only as images. Now, I mean, images are great, of course. As a human reader, you can do a lot of things with them. You can read the text. You can look at the images, maybe compare one page to the other. But what happens if you don't want to read the whole text, for instance, and you want to look at a specific term, such as Mercurius, which I will use throughout the presentation? Basically, you can't search in simple image-based documents, including a lot of the PDFs. Now, you may be aware that Google Books, of course, does offer a search option within the texts that it digitized. And here I just search Mercurius in the Alchemia and I get 10 results. You can see that at the bottom. This, by the way, does not mean individual instances of Mercurius, but basically page matches. I don't actually get the total number. But for instance, on the first page that is highlighted 306, you actually get 5 instances of the word Mercurius. And I actually counted by hand, and the total amount of instances in the in the whole book is 22 instances. Now this is fine. I mean, it works. Uh, but what if I'm looking for variants of the word Mercurius? And for those of you who know Latin, you will know that Mercurius declines in various ways. So you can get things like Mercurium or Mercurio or Mercuriorum, Mercuri, various other things. And basically what you immediately see when you look at Google Books is that it doesn't accept this kind of variants of words. And I've tried different ways to do it, including placeholders. If you know of a way, let me know, because it would be great. But basically what I tried here, I mean, I was trying with a placeholder with the asterisk, and it didn't recognize the asterisk really. It just took the first part Mercury, and it just rendered something that starts with Mercury. Mercury, that sounds a bit like that. So basically, going to another level, what for instance, do I do if I'm looking for variants of the word Mercurius, even more specifically, across 15 to 1600 alchemical works? Well, you can't do that much. I mean, you can do a few things. I mean, there is in Google Books, there is an advanced book search, and you can put there Mercurius. You can also specify here at the publication date, you can specify between 1500 and 1600. But what you get is something like this. So you immediately see that they select names of books that have Mercurius in the title as being the first. It's by relevance only. And you have to, it doesn't say how many you get, and you have to go through them, and they are not specifically on alchemy either. So it's basically anything that they have that contains the word Mercurius, they will give it to you, and you have to scroll through the pages, which can be very many, to get that kind of thing. Also, of course, the search does not help with variants at all, just as in the case of the book search. So basically, what we try to do is to fill in these gaps. So basically, what EMLAP can do is to perform various searches within one Latin text, including variants of words. It performs searches across several Latin texts, including the variants of the word you're looking for. And finally, it focuses on alchemical topics. And here I put an asterisk because I want to explain better what I mean by alchemical topics, which is, of course, in itself a thorny issue. But before I go, I should say that there are, of course, limitations to the corpus. It was, of course, fortunate that it was funded by the Czech government, but of course, the budget was limited and the time was very limited. So we had to restrain the corpus to fit within the 2 years that we were allotted. So in the end, we are covering Latin prints only, of course. We are addressing the period 1500 to 1650. And of course, the corpus is not comprehensive. So, but it is, let's say, meaningful. And I will explain later why. Um, at this point, I should mention that we're, of course, not the first to do an alchemical corpus that can be searched, and I would like to acknowledge the existing, and I mean I'm aware of two basically, which is one is the Chemistry of Isaac Newton by Bill Newman, of course, and the Theo database of Paracelsus, which is led by Urslio Gantenbein and Didier Kahn. In addition, there is this Noschemus that Petr also mentioned, and which I will talk about a little bit further, and does contain some alchemical texts. And there's, of course, for those of you who work a lot with um, early modern texts, you know of Igbo, early English books online. So these are English books that were published, and here you can find quite a few alchemical books, but only in the English language, so not in Latin. And of course, I should mention the digital editions, such as the Furnace and Fugue, which contains Michael Myers' Atalanta Fugiens, as led by Tara Numedal. Now, I want to take you rather quickly to show you the steps of how we came about with this corpus. So the first step was to define what we mean by early modern alchemy. The second step was to map earlier modern alchemical print. The third to create a database of alchemical prints, and of course the fourth and maybe most important one was to transcribe this list. So first of all, what is early modern alchemy? And as many of you know, this is a very alchemy is a very complex and disputed field. But for the sake of simplicity, I've divided the topic into two basic definitions. So there is let's say, a narrow definition and a wide definition. And the narrow definition is the most common, the one you hear most about, which is that alchemy is metallic transmutation of usually baser metals into gold or silver, actually. This is by use of usually an agent that they often call philosopher's stone, although it can be called elixir or many other names. And this is supposed to facilitate this transformation of the metal into gold or silver. Now, this is a perfectly fine definition, is good to work with, but it's also very restrictive. And basically, in the last, let's say, 20, 30 years, we've become more aware of the fact that alchemy, especially in the medieval and early modern periods in Europe, was very wide. It covered a lot of fields, so it was a very, let's say, amorphous field of knowledge that basically were connected by let's say, chemical processes. So this is my tentative definition, is that during the early modern period, it was basically the art of perfecting substances by chemical means. And by chemical means, I mean processes like distillation or sublimation or this kind of things that can be broadly defined as being chemical. Now, this, let's say that if I follow the narrow path to the narrow definition, it would have been easier for me and for us in general in the Tome project. But I think it's not sufficient for the complexity of early modern alchemy. So I chose to go by the wider definition. Now, transmutational treatises are much easier to identify in primary sources and also better represented in scholarship, and especially, I should say, in the catalogs. So when I was starting to map this early modern alchemical print, um, I started with the basic catalogs that are have been appearing usually mostly at the beginning of the 20th century and throughout. But I discovered that there are drawbacks to most of these catalogs. Um, Even as, I mean, most of them are actually addressing a certain kind of collection in particular, like the Mellon collection or the Ferguson collection. At the same time, Ferguson I found more useful than others because at least he was trying to give us a survey of alchemy in the period. And I should also commend Bruning, the 2004 volumes, which are more helpful. The main problem I also had was that they mix prints and manuscripts, so you have to disentangle them as well. I also used online catalogs because I found this particularly useful in identifying some small Latin prints that actually do not appear in the written catalogs. So here I would particularly commend the VD16 German database, where I found some little known Latin prints that, for instance, don't appear in Ferguson. And I also used a very good aggregator called Karlsruhe Virtual Catalog, which shows you internationally where you can find different copies of a certain book. Um, at this point, so basically, what I should mention is that in the end, I made a catalog of alchemy, and this was in the first year of the project, and I focused it on the 16th century. I only focused on the first editions and definitive editions, and only the ones that are available online, and in Latin, of course. And the result was something like 140 publications for the 16th century only. Out of these, about eight were transcribed by Noschemus, the project I mentioned. So that left quite a lot to do. And unfortunately, due to the limitations of the project, I had to cut down on this 132 publications I came up with. So in the end, I said, okay, let's have some yardsticks, some reasons to narrow down the catalog. I focused on the importance of the work. I tried to give as much as possible a variety of them. So you can find the mandatory transmutational texts, but there are also texts of medical alchemy and of Paracelsianism there. And I also tried to introduce some recipe-based works, including some books of secrets. There were, of course, other considerations on narrowing down, such as the ability of high resolution images, which are very important in providing a good transcription. based on this narrowed down catalog, I then created a structured database basically containing the information of the prints I'm using. And here I've used a couple of let's say standard forms of metadata or categories that you can fit these things to. So things like name of authors, the title, the editor, the translator, the publisher, the location of the print. And we also tried to connect them to international authority files. But this actually proved quite a thorny subject because there are not many international authority files, or there are too many, we can say, because there's various authority files like VIAF and SERL, but they're not all saying the same thing. So in the case of Alchemy, there's many very obscure people that are actually not captured in this kind of databases. So basically the catalogs look like this, and I won't go into it unless you have a very specific question about it. So at the step 4, of course, there was the issue of actually transcribing this catalog that I narrowed down. So here I should mention that there is a scale of how much you can do, and let's say at the perfect scale is a digital edition, which is of course highly curated, but it takes a lot of time, and you get a lot less quantity. I mean, it's basically you need a team, you need maybe time for it to do it. So at the other end is the automatic transcription, which is not curated at all, and it takes a lot less time. You get a lot bigger quantity, but so far it hasn't been that, let's say the quality is not that high. So our edition has been a hybrid. Let's say we have done both automating as well as two hands of curation by human editors. So we got, let's say, a medium quantity but a higher quality, which is, I think, was important for the purposes of what we wanted to do. At this point, I should mention that I ran the digital philological team of four excellent PhD students that I should mention: Alexander Huber, Jana Kodetova, Andrei Krish, and Jindra Kubichkova, and they acted as the first hand and the main, let's say, first editors of the automatic transcription. For the automatic transcription, we used a tool called Transcribus, which you may be familiar with. And this is a next generation AI-based transcription tool. They used to be OCRs. Now they don't like the term OCR, but this is basically what they are. The advantage of Transcribus is in the AI function, which I won't get into, but basically what you can do, of course, is to create an AI model that then you apply to different text. And the advantage of doing prints, of course, is that well, I mean, in the early modern period, the print is more or less standardized. It's certainly more so today. But you can extend the AI model over quite a lot of material due to the existence of Latin cursive print. So the type font is very important. I should also mention that there was a serendipity in our project. I mean, basically, Tom started just as this project Noschemus was winding down. So Noschemus was a ERC-funded project led by Professor Martin Koreniak at the University of Innsbruck in Austria. And one of the things they did was to do automatic transcription over a wide quantity of history of science in the early modern period and in Latin specifically. Um, basically, what we have is Noschemus, and I should mention Stefan Zatthammer, who did these transcriptions. So Stefan did an AI model, which is called Noschemus, of course, and is found in Transcribus. And this was very much a stepping stone for us and a reason to use Transcribus in the first place. Because the Noschemus model can read Latin cursive very well. It understands things like Latin abbreviations, and there are peculiarities for those of you who work with Latin print in this period. You know that the F looks like an S and S looks like an F. So the modern OCRs don't really understand this, but the AI model that Noschemus made was very much able to do that, to make that kind of separation. Unfortunately, when we started, we also noticed that there are still problems that require human curation. So this is an example here, just to show you what I mean. Basically, we the layout, the traditional, let's say, standard layout of Transcribus does not recognize marginalia. And the marginalia, of course, are the little text on the right-hand side in this in italics there. So basically, there are notations that were made. And this is very, very common in early modern alchemical print. And the standard layout doesn't recognize them. So it actually, what it does is just pull the text and put it inside the main body of the text. So that makes it very problematic. There were other problems we noticed, things like if a certain character is oversized, it will not understand it. Transcribus has problems with images, and things below, just below or next to the images, it doesn't read well. So all these things suggested to us that we need to do some human curation on top of the automatic transcription. One other thing that I did was to create a separate AI model, which basically builds on Noschemus, but addressed some issues that were we noticed in our corpus, which was I mean, there's a lot of italic in our corpus, and Noschemus was not as good as with that, so I trained a bit more on this. We also try to automatically transcribe some of the symbols that appear in alchemical texts and medical texts, and that also helped. But again, we still need the human curation. I'll just briefly mention this so I don't take too much time. This is how we approached the pipeline of the EMLAP. So we basically uploaded a good transcription on Transcribus. We run the automatic transcription. Then one of the PhD students would check it and retain the images from it, make some annotations. Then they would pass it over to me, and I would enter the metadata and verify what they've done. And finally, we uploaded the transcription to a Czech database. One thing I should also mention there is that we used some, let's say, idiosyncratic marking. The specialist should know that normally it should be XML, but in the interests of time, we couldn't afford to do all that, so that will be done at a later stage. For now, we used some basic tags that show you where the marginalia ends, for instance. And we also mark symbols or languages in with simple marking. So finally the transcription results. So we have 100 transcribed works of Latin alchemy, of which 75 works are for the 16th century and 25 works from 1600 to 1650. We have a metadata catalog that will be put online shortly, and the validation model that I mentioned, the AI model, Tom 2.1. Basically, I'm giving a few names of the works that we transcribed. I think there are some very important 16th century alchemical prints like Artis Aurifere, of course, was the biggest, at something like 400,000 words. There's Petrus Bonus. There are also Paracelsian texts like Petrus Severinus and Oswald Kroll. And when we got to the 17th century, we had to select very drastically. So we focused on just a few works for that period of time. Here, I mean, you'll find this also on the website. This is a very basic chart, and it kind of shows you, it's not that important for the 1600 to 1650, but from 1500 to 1550, we have only a few alchemical texts, and there is basically a kind of turning point around 1550 where you get a lot. And we can talk about that. It has a lot to do with Paracelsus and the Paracelsian phenomenon. So there is an explosion of Latin alchemical print around the 1550s. So the results themselves, what we decided was we wanted to make the corpus available for two, let's say, categories of readers. And one of them is the scholars, or let's say informed readers of alchemical texts, who are not proficient or not interested in complex computational analysis. These I call hybrid readers. And for these, we built the EMLAP search website, which I will show you shortly. For those scholars and IT savvy readers who wish to perform computational analysis, basically we upload this corpus on the Zenodo open access repository. So the corpus and the catalog. Now I should mention the caveats for now that we haven't finished releasing the full corpus. So we did a partial release of about 60 works, if I'm not wrong. And the website itself is still in the beta stage. So we're still testing the search function as well as the general text has to be improved a little bit. Just to show you briefly the EMLAP website, so it looks like this. The address is emlap at flu.cas.cz. And here I should mention that it's hosted on the Institute of Philosophy of the Czech Academy of Sciences. And this is great because they're committed to keeping it online, so the sustainability part is better assured. So basically, what you can do here, I mean, you can do a lot of things, but I think the strong point is the search function. And here I would point out that you can select the fuzziness of a term. So let's say I started by showing you what Mercurius does in Google Books. Well, here you can search Mercurius per se if you put 0 or non-fuzziness. Or you can search for variants of Mercurius by selecting medium or high fuzziness. And you have to search. Usually the high fuzziness is the better one. It depends, however. Sometimes it depends on the example. Sometimes I get better results of medium or high, but you have to play around and see how it works. And this is basically what I got last night. I just put Mercurius in there, and I selected specifically the Alchemia, and it shows you the context of that word, as well as a snippet, let's say, of the actual image. And then you can click on them and actually go into the text itself. And I'm just aware of the time. I just wanted to show you just briefly. Let's see if I can do it. Okay. Let's see. One sec. This is always takes a bit of time to make it work. Okay, I think I have to close this one. And yeah, basically open this one. Okay, so basically, this is the EMLAP. So here is where you go for, I don't know if you can still see my,
Yes, we can see your screen with the
you can
EMLAP
still see my
page.
screen. Okay. So yeah, basically here you can enter something, as I said, Mercurius, or we can do something else. But yeah, and the search options are here. And you can select the fuzziness of the Mercurius. So basically, let's say we put high to look at some variants of this word, and you get the books where it is. And as I said, there are not all of them. We're still working on this. But you can see here when you go down that you can get things like mercurium and mercury. You get the Mercurius, and you search across the corpora. So this is in another place, and this is Pyrophilia by Pseudoporocelsus. And in this case, it's good to see. There is actually the symbol for Mercurius, and we transcribed it as Mercurius, so it will find also some symbols that have been used in the text. So here in this image, you can compare the image with the text that has been transcribed. And then of course you can go back. And there is also this search catalog, which I will just briefly mention. Here you have all the books that are transcribed. So, and you can search, let's say you are interested in a certain publisher. I don't know, let's say if this guy had, okay, he published only one book, which is Spongia stibi by Toxites. You can also look for, let's say, reset. You can look for like places. Let's say I want to see what books were published in Augsburg. And here you can say Artis aurifera secretis naturae from the corpus. I think I will stop here because to give some chance for people to ask questions. So I will stop the sharing. And thank you very much. And of course, at this point, let's see what people want to ask. So it's okay. I will start with Alex Angerhofer before I go to the chat. So Alex, if you wish to ask your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation and fantastic project. I have tons of questions. I will probably have to limit myself. I guess So the reason I'm actually interested in the Turba and I show up to these meetings is because I teach a class on alchemy in a general education setting at my university. I'm by profession a chemist. I'm not really a historian. But one of the problems that I have is with my students uh, trying to get them to the original text, and that is very, very difficult. And I think this is a wonderful project that potentially gives me the option. So question one is how good are the online translators? If I have a Latin text can I use an online translator to actually get an English translation that is any worth?
Yes, actually, I mean, as far as I saw, I mean, the new, like the Chat GPT and this kind of very modern LLMs actually don't do a bad job at translation. There's also, I think, DeepL. I can't remember if it's in Latin or not. This is the problem. But yeah, I mean it's actually a decent translation. Of course, it's not a professional translation, but you can make sense out of it. So I would say try that. We actually I was thinking about that actually, and I was thinking like to at some point when I have a bit of time to test what might work best with for the English translation. But as far as I saw, the new LLMs are doing a decent job with it. So it's as far as if you don't want a professional, like edition or translation, I think it's good enough. So
Thank you. I also, if I can add, it would be wonderful to get a list of these repositories that you mentioned that you came across that certainly I am not very much aware of. That would help me greatly to give to my students and have them search for their own background research.
yeah, I know it's there really should be an aggregator of all these websites, and unfortunately there isn't. So this is something that could be a common little project actually for several people that are interested in alchemy to put that together, maybe with Shack. I mean, Shack would be a good place to have something like that, kind of a resource page like that. So it's something to, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I'm glad to hear that you're teaching this. So it's it's great. I think there was a question from Sarah, but I think okay. So she asked about the if we use the research website that is provided by Transcribus. I mean, Petr actually answered this already and said that we didn't. We actually did a specialist solution that is through a company. Uh, I mean, if you want to say something. Yeah,
Well,
we
yeah,
outsourced this to a company called iDesign that handled all this. So we didn't go through the Transcribus itself, but through this.
exactly.
And let's see what else was there. Yvonne, yes. Hi, Yvonne. I can't hear
Hi,
you.
hi. Can you hear me now?
Yes, but barely.
Barely. Oh, right. Yes, and then
But I can hear it. I mean, it's
yeah. Okay, cool. Cool. Thank you very much for this, you know, amazing presentation, and thank you everyone for this amazing project. So I think I mainly have a question about how do you design the search function that enables to capture the fuzziness of the word. So when you say, for example, you use the word luxurious, and how do you ensure that it is able to extract the different sequences of this word in text? And how do you display the context surrounding that word as well?
yeah, I mean, I mean, what Martin, I mean, the guys from ID Sign used is something called Elasticsearch, which can be basically adjusted for different kind of fuzziness. Another solution, of course, is what we use in with Vojtech. I mean, computationally, something like regular expressions. That's one way. I mean, Wojtek, if you have any other ideas.
Yeah, I want to comment on that because it's not visible in the current version of the website. I'm not sure why, but actually what we gave to the company producing the graphical user interface are also automatically morphologically annotated data. So basically we took all the texts, morphologically annotated them automatically. So basically for each word, for each token, we also have its lemma, all right? It's like the form as it is in the dictionary. So basically you could also search through that. But I was a bit surprised today to see that it's not included in the current version of the beta, or it's not explicit there because it was there some a couple of weeks ago. So maybe it's hidden behind the fuzziness. I'm not sure, but definitely we have this kind of data now.
It's still in process, yeah. You know, it is really not
Yeah.
public in the sense that we can say it is done. It is still in process, and it will be hopefully by the end of this year, maybe in January.
And I would also like to comment shortly on Alexander's question about the automatic translation. This is also related to that. We will still extend the amount and the types of export formats. So like that you can, the graphic user interface, it's basically, there is this connection between the images and the texts, and this is not the most flexible format for giving it to an LLM to translate or stuff like that. But at the same time, we will also have a full text export, which will be partly cleaned, because one other aspect of the pipeline, in addition to the text of the grid text and symbols, is that we also automatically annotated the footers and headers on the pages, so that you can get the flow of a sentence, like this goes from one page to another, right? It's not perfect, but it's better than just taking the whole text. So that you would be able to get the flow of the text as it is, not disrupted by the page divisions, for instance. So we are still working on that, and there is still a lot of stuff to improve, but it's on the way somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I should add that maybe when we have let's say the actual good version, we will maybe make a guide as well on how to search and that kind of thing, because it would be probably useful for a lot of people. I mean, basically at this moment it works, but if you want to do like more proper analysis, then I would encourage you to download the corpus and actually work with it in some environment. So then you can do all sorts of things. So it's but this is very good for I hope for people that don't want to go into that kind of thing. So just as a let's say way to select things like by topics or by translators, or find some things across the subject. I don't know if there were any more questions. I'm aware of time. Oh, unfortunately, someone came just now to the meeting.
About the ramp.
Yes, Alex, you wanted to ask
Actually,
something?
I think Sarah wanted to ask a question. See, she raised her finger, so maybe you should defer the person.
Sorry, I can only see the ones that people put their automatic hand up.
Demokratische Republik Kongo, hurra, es kann.
Okay, Sarah, do you want to ask a question or?
Sorry, did you hear me earlier? My internet froze, I think.
No, we didn't hear you. We didn't hear you.
Okay,
We
I
didn't
wanted
hear.
to ask Ramis tables how you encoded that, because I will be encoding some of that myself.
Right, yes. Yeah, yes, it's a thing that I think we I will talk to you about that because it's as I said, it's probably a kind of a niche thing. And yeah, I still have to finish that. I mean, I made a video and I made a guideline of how I did it. Doesn't mean it can't be improved actually, but yeah, we will update that at some point. As I said, it's just been too hectic to do that still, but it's on the list. So yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I still have a question, if I may.
Okay, Alex, sure.
So in your survey, I understand that you're focused on Latin texts, but you must also have a good idea of what is out there in the vernacular. I mean, what is the average distribution? I mean, is there more in Latin, or is there more in German, more in Italian? What are the different languages that you might encounter if you look at books in the early modern period that deal with alchemy?
Yeah, that's actually a big question. I mean, I would say that if you look for, I mean, it also depends on what you look for, because if you look for, let's say, learned treatises of alchemy, you will find that Latin is the most important, especially by physicians and like learned individuals, and it's the lingua franca of
Yes,
of
course.
Europe during this period. But there is a progression. I mean, there is a rise in vernacular, definitely. And not only that, but I mean, there is a lot of Italians wrote in vernacular, even at the beginning of the period. So a lot of the important Italian texts are in Italian. And there is a tendency towards vernacular in Germany. I think there's a lot of German texts out there. My suspicion is probably the most during this period, but from the other languages, I mean, but I can't give you a clear number. And of course, towards the 1650s, you see there is much more, increasingly more in English. So there is a lot of people that use the English alchemical texts because they're obviously more accessible. I mean, in the old English style, but it's not that difficult to understand. So for that, I would suggest to go on the EBO database. So EBO. I mean, I mean, basically, you can search. I don't know if it's. I mean, there's ways to get all sorts of stuff from there. I think you can search by different words, but there is a lot in English. So from the 1650s onwards. So I would suggest to use that if you wish to.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is a link in the chat from Petr for the EBO if you'd like to use that. And ideally, one day all this should be aggregated as well, but we're not there yet. So for us, Latin was very important because there's a lot that is out there that hasn't been transcribed, and there is this tendency of going to the English ones, English translations, which are often not so good of the Latin. So or they are so there is a kind of emphasis on English text that makes sense, of course, but we wanted to give more access to Latin alchemy. So okay, it is late, so I want to thank you all for coming. I hope this was not too fast and not too quick and just helpful enough to guide you. And again, if you find something that is obviously wrong on the website, I mean, feel free to write to us, to me or anyone of the project to let us know. And we will be working on this. So yeah, thank you. Next time it's Wojtek's turn. So Wojtek will talk more about the computational side of the project and especially about the his analysis of the Noschemus corpus, and it will be and his way of analyzing certain occurrences of text with more advanced computational tools. So we'll maybe do Mercurius again just for the fun of it and see how we can also do that in Noschemus as well as EMLAP. So thank you again. I'm glad it didn't crash. This is the most important thing. And see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Have a great
Bye.
weekend. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Great weekend. Bye.